One. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the show. My name is Diana Wynn, and I am the host and creator of the SnortCast. We've been going live twice a week on the SnortCast. I just love live TV. SnortCast. We've got international. We've got Williamsburg. We've got Ohio, Baltimore, Toronto. We've got Tonga. What? I think people just heard sex in the second point, so we'll flow from.
I am not ready to talk about it. It is. I just don't. Oh my God.
What the hell happened to your arm?
It's just a fashion accessory.
That was fantastic.
Thank you so much for joining the SnortCast, something that I deeply love doing, which is laughing. And I hope to see you on our show every week, keeping it snorting real. And howdy, howdy, howdy. I will appear very soon. Hi, everyone. And welcome to the SnortCast. And if you are watching in, thank you so much for being joining the second season of the SnortCast. We had a miraculous season last year in lockdown last year. I did 33 interviews during lockdown because none of the comedians could leave their homes. So I am back on again because there is a special event happening in 3 weeks' time in my hometown, Melbourne, Australia. We are having the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, and we're going to be performing live on stage, talking for 50 minutes non-stop and not getting pulled off. So I'm really excited to have you on the SnortCast. So the SnortCast is a live interview show that I interview comedians from all around the world, but more specifically comedians who are performing at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, talking about their funny. And I would love to find out from you, where are you watching from? Where are you snorting from? And you know I am a snorter, and you know I snort in my videos, and there are snorters out there who are snorters too. So please let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We are live on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. This is the first time we're back on the SnortCast, having a laugh with you and talking about process, how comedians become funny or are funny, and what's that backstory, and you know, what's the story of their show that they're performing at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. So before we bring on our guest, just want to let you know that we are at the SnortCast on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and if you hashtag the SnortCast, you'll find it. And I want to say thank you to our Patreon community for supporting the SnortCast and bringing joy to everyone around the world. It's been a real miracle how this show has kind of just leapt out and had its own life. So thank you so much for supporting the SnortCast. And tell us where you are watching from. Let us know. Just pop in the comments. Let us know where you are watching the show from. And let's bring in our guest. Had enough of me talking. I'm excited to invite our guest. She's seen on Network 10's How to Stay Married, which I was on last season, the ABC's Tonightly with Tom Ballard, and the Melbourne International Comedy Festival Roadshow. As heard on ABC Radio, Audible, and as a co-host on Joe Stanley's Broad Radio. She's opened for Joel Creasy, Tom Gleeson, Tommy Little, and Judith Lucy. And she's emceed events all over Melbourne, has performed in all lineups of Melbourne. Like, she has been hustling because she was right on the Zooms during lockdown and working, and she's just blown up since we've gotten out of restrictions in November. So very excited to bring on our first guest for season 2, and I want you to see her work. Now I'm going to navigate this. I told you it's been a while since I've done this. I've done this so gracefully. Please, I would like to introduce you our first guest for season 2, Kirsty Webeck, and this is her work.
Kirsty Webeck!
Hey, legends. I was in the supermarket recently and a small child yelled out at me, "Hey, you look like a man." And I said, "Can you please tell that to my boss so it's reflected in my pay?" Oh, thank you. I appreciate that, but it wasn't that tough, actually. If that had been a grown-up, I would have been like, "Oh, righto, mate, thanks for the feedback." But when faced with a small child, just boom! Just went full Jermaine Greer in the cereal aisle. In your face! Not that tough. I moved house recently. Terrible job. Worst job, isn't it? We hate moving house. It's so bad. I thought I hated moving house more than anyone else in the world, but I'll tell you who does. Removalists. They hate it so hard from the second you call up the company.
And we'll leave it there and bring on our guest. Kirsty, welcome.
Hello, thank you. How you going?
Good, and our community are watching, and I think even your parents are online from Canberra.
Yeah. Oh, there's my dad. Dad, this is too late. Go to bed, Dad. That is, oh my gosh, that's so cute. That's very cute. Thanks,
Yeah,
Dad. I appreciate that. All right, we're going to keep this PG.
Yeah. All right, so I did a little summary of you, but if you had to say 3 things about you, who are you?
Oh, immediately I heard 3 words and I was like, oh no, but you said 3 things, so that's great. Okay, well I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm going to say I'm an entertainer as well, and as of 2 weeks ago, I'm a futsal player.
Ooh.
And I've taken it on so like wholeheartedly that now it's part of my identity, and to the point that I've mentioned it today first and foremost.
I'm playing basketball, and my cardio is so bad that I feel like vomiting in the second half of the game. How has futsal been used? Is it as intensive as basketball?
Yeah, it is. So I used to play basketball until a couple of years ago, and I haven't really played any team sports for a little while, so it feels very hard at the moment, but I would definitely say that futsal is up there with basketball. It's those quick changes. You know, it's the sprinting and the turning and the turning and the sprinting and the get the ball and throw it somewhere. Not in futsal, no throwing.
No, you're just playing with your feet. You know, there's no double.
But I always want to. I want to get it with the ball, and the refs love telling me. They're like, no. They're constant. Like whenever I go like this, they're like, no, and I'm like, no, I'm just scaring the opposition.
I love it. What a great image of you just doing this on court.
Yeah. Just spooking everyone.
I asked my guests, a second question I ask is, if you had to write a memoir, what would be the title of your book? And I know you've got a podcast, which is called The Best.
That's correct.
What would your book be called?
Whoops. Probably whoops, because I feel like my book would be probably not dissimilar to my stand-up, where it would probably showcase quite a few very innocent, well-intended mishaps. So I feel like I'm just one of those people who just like try to do the right thing or try to get involved in things, and that creates a chain of events, which is great when you're in my line of work. Yes. It's wonderful. There's always a story to tell, but I feel like my book would be in that vein as well. So whoops would be apt.
Love it. Simply. Keep it
clean.
So what was the first whoops of your memory of comedy in your life? Like, was it early on as a child, or when did you develop that comedy bone in you?
Yeah, I think it was when I was a child. I would say probably late primary school. I think I turned into the class clown, and I just used to love making everyone laugh, and including the teacher. So I was never too disruptive, but it's just I really got a taste for that. Like, here's an example. I think I reckon I would have been in year 3 or year 4, and I just remember the teacher said, "Kirsty Webeck, you're not listening," and I said, "Yes, I am." And then the teacher said, "Well, what did I just say then?" And I said, "Kirsty Webeck, you're not listening." And it was so simple, but it killed. And like, I just remember that feeling of like, oh yeah, like just managing to get a reaction out of pretty much everyone in the class.
No.
And I wish stand-up was that easy now. Like, that was such a basic joke and it crushed. Now I've got to work much harder for the lols.
Oh,
But
I've seen you at work. I've seen you at Comedy Republic and UMC, like from top to end, and you have the audience the moment you walk on. Like, no, I still think that child's still in there somewhere. Yeah, that child is still.
yeah, it's still there. Yeah, still there, loving the reactions. Like, absolutely. Yeah, that's very kind. Thank you.
And you know, when you say the class clown, what was it that you became the class clown? Because some comedians I talked about, and I was a class clown in school as well. But it was my way to fit in and be cool. Like, what was your like reason for being a class clown, or was it just because you loved making people laugh?
Yeah, I think it was because I loved making people laugh. I mean, I came from a family that was full of jokers. I think I have an identical sense of humour to my dad. There's a shout out, Dad. So that's a test to see if you're still listening. Imagine if I've busted them and they just tuned in for the first 1 minute and now they've gone to bed. Oh no, Dad. But yeah, I think it took me a while to come out of my shell, and then when I did, I realised that my sense of humour was a really big part of me. And yeah, I think it was always just I just enjoyed making people laugh, and that brought me great joy, and it brought everyone in my class great joy as well. And I just kind of got hooked on that kind of feeling. Like, I think, yeah, I think I already had mates, so I don't know if it was to fit in necessarily. I mean, don't get me wrong, there was a time when I didn't have mates, but by the time I was the class clown, I definitely had a few mates to back me up. Yeah. The We Hate Kirsty Club had dispersed by the time I found my feet with the jokes.
Love it. That's great. And who inspires your comedy? Like, what gets you on stage to write great content?
I don't know if it's a who, or just a who. Anyway, it's probably just environmental. Like, everything and anything around me, I guess, inspires me to keep writing jokes and to get up on stage. I mean, there's a lot of great comedians that I really look up to, and who I adore working with, and that especially when I was starting out, really shaped my comedy. Like that old thing when you're first starting out in comedy where someone will always say to you, like, always stick around and watch the headliner. And it's a really hard thing to do, though, because they go on late. And it's even worse when you become a headliner and you've got to go on late.
Yes.
But you stick around and you watch people, and I think we're really lucky that we have such a robust comedy scene in Australia, and also in Melbourne in particular, because we're really afforded lots of opportunities to work with really talented comedians that have been doing it for exponentially longer than we have. And so you get to watch them and learn and grow. So, so in terms of, who inspires me to be a better comedian, it's probably a lot of my peers in the scene here in Melbourne. And then in terms of content, it's like, absolutely whatever. Like, whatever's did you notice, like, especially in lockdown, like you mentioned earlier that I was doing a lot of Zoom gigs?
Yes.
And about 3 weeks into lockdown, I was like, What's there to talk about? I haven't left the house for 3 weeks except to go to the supermarket. So I'd be like, this plant's funny. What is there anything about the rug? Like, and it was actually a cool challenge. Like it ended up being a really cool writing challenge. Like whenever you went on Zoom or you did radio or whatever, it was like, all right, I've got to get so creative because everything is very boring right now.
Yeah. And you've headlined my show, the SnortCast Comedy in St Kilda, and exactly what you just said. You headlined, but you came early and watched the whole show and watched all these other comedians, because I think it's really important to see what's on the scene and what's new and what's coming in. So yeah, thank you for doing that headline for that show. But I really loved, and you talked about how to be inspired during lockdown. I particularly loved when you did a joke about working in Asia as a teacher, and you were teaching kids how to speak English. What was the inspiration to go overseas? Because I guess the question is, how long have you been doing comedy for?
Okay, so I've been doing comedy for going on 8 years. Yeah, it must be coming up to that. Like it was 7.5 years probably. And my inspiration for going overseas was actually to study Mandarin. I wanted to learn how to speak Mandarin.
What?
And yeah.
Why?
I just thought it would be interesting. And I was right. I was very right about that. It was very interesting. But I only wanted to go for 1 year. And then, so I went to Taiwan. Yes. And I went for 1 year, and I came back 6 years later. So, like I was there for just under 6 years. And it was just at the end of each year, I'd be like, all right, one more. And then like there was never a plan to be there for nearly 6 years. But yeah, I ended up, I loved it, and I stayed. And at like the 4-year mark, I was like, maybe I should go home. and then I was like, oh no, like my Mandarin's starting to get better. I should stick around for a bit longer. And I ended up, so I was working in teaching to fund studying as well. And then my last 2 years, I ended up working in publishing. So I was like writing books and editing books, like educational materials and stuff. So yeah, it was really fun. And that was like pretty much my 20s gone.
So you can speak Chinese fluently or Mandarin fluently?
I used to speak it very well when I got back. Yeah. And my comprehension is still really, really great. And I surprise myself. Like, yes. This is a funny story. Like a little while ago, I was, I'll let you be the judge of whether or not it's funny. a little while ago, I was walking here in Melbourne, like in South Yarra, and this really elderly man like came up to me, and he couldn't speak English, and he was asking me, like, he wanted to get into the city and he wanted to catch a certain bus, and he was asking me just in Mandarin and not even a hint of English, and he was just asking me as if it was just absolutely expected that I'd be able to reply.
Yes.
But the coolest thing was that I could. Like, he just accidentally chose me. And so I was just like, oh yeah, like you just go over there and then cross the street and whatever. And then he was just like, okay, thanks. And like just walked off. And I thought about it so much because I was like, he just spoke to me as if he like 100% expected that I would be able to speak Mandarin.
Yes.
But then coincidentally I could. So it was a very strange event. But I need to practice more now because I think my skills are still there, but they'll be fading. Yeah. They'll be fading by the second. So
have you done any of this? Have you spoken Chinese in your shows at all?
No, I had one joke years ago where I can't even remember the joke now, but I replied in Mandarin in the context of the story, and it was surprising to the person that I'd responded in Mandarin. So I did that sentence in Mandarin in the show, and that's literally it. Like, I haven't even talked that much about living abroad or. Yeah, I mean, I could incorporate it. I mean, it's a trick up my sleeve, isn't it? When I run out of content, I'll start mining that.
No, when you need a new audience. I'm just saying you could have an influx of Chinese people wanting comedy and you standing there just speaking Chinese the whole time. I
Yeah,
reckon you could market.
yeah, just going for it in Mandarin. I think I never mastered humor. I think that's a very different level. Like I never, yeah, I don't think I tapped into the sense of humor.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
understand what you're talking about. Yes. Yeah,
yeah.
you can't just expect to be funny. Like I can't speak Vietnamese. And I MC weddings and I try to be funny. It doesn't come off funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
it's a
doesn't come off.
totally different thing. Like it's very, very hard if you didn't grow up bilingual, I think. It's very difficult. I mean, I'm sure some people can do it, but yeah, that's above my skill set currently. I'm gonna have to really get onto Duolingo for a few years until I can start tapping into that.
And I just wanted to let you know that Trevor is awake. He's still
Oh,
here.
good on you, Trevor. Good on you, Dad. I'm pleased you're awake.
He's
That's
going
really
for it.
good.
Going for the award. Well, let's go straight to Comedy Festival. You've got a show at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival called Chuckasiki. It's
Yeah.
from April the 6th to 18th, 6:10 p.m. Ticket, click on, just type that in and you'll find Kirsty and everyone's show on there. But what
Yeah.
inspired the show and how do you start writing these ideas into, creating a show called Chuckasiki?
Well, I ended up calling the show Chuckasiki. It was basically based on a funny conversation that I had with my friend during lockdown. We'd go for weekly walks up the beach because she was within my 5-kilometre radius. And essentially, we had a funny conversation one day where I was saying that I thought I was going to be offered like a really early time slot in the festival. And like the idea of a mid-afternoon show was being floated around and I thought it was really funny. And I was talking about how I'd market it and how I'd just be like, oh, you've got a job and you can't come to my show because it's in the middle of the day. Just chuck a sickie. And like I just did all of these taglines for my show. Just like, oh, like can't get the day off work to come to my festival show. Chuck a sickie. Like lunch break's not long enough to come to my festival show. Chuck a sickie. And we were laughing so much. And like we'd both just been so bored for so long. Yeah. And we were walking along the beach and we were just laughing about this for way too long. And then I was like, I'm going to call my show Chuckasiki. And then I already had some bits of the show worked out from last year's show that I only got to do twice in Hobart. Yes. And then I was working on little bits like while I was doing gigs around town and on Zoom and whatever. I was working on 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. And then one part that I'd been working on for a while was about how I'm like a massive baby about anything medical and like any kind of injuries and stuff. Like I'm a huge baby about it and my partner's a nurse. And so I've got this bit that goes in the show that's all about that contrast. And so that just kind of coincidentally ended up like fitting in really nicely with the Chuckasiki theme. Right. And yeah, and so all the rest of it's just been over time worked up in rooms and yeah, different Zoom meetings and like, whatever, like a little corporate lunch meeting stand-up set, like, oh, throw 5 minutes in there that I think that I might use in my festival show. We'll see what happens. So yeah, I've been scrounging, Diana. I've just been scrounging for material.
Oh, I love it. Well, I feel like what we've had to do since November has been like life experiences. What can we talk about yes. that will entertain people? Yeah. But yeah, what has been your journey since Melbourne lockdown to now? Because you've been on the stages all over Melbourne working.
Yeah, so I actually just did a gig tonight, and then raced home to do this with you. And I was saying at that gig, I was down at the local, and I was catching up with someone I hadn't seen for a while down there, and I was saying that towards the end of last year, like when things started to open up, I was like, oh, stand up will take a little while to get back up and running. So I was like, that's cool. Like I've been, working during the lockdown or whatever, so no problem. And I just thought like, oh, surely we won't have anything on until like January or February or whatever. Probably January. But like overnight, everything opened up. Like the government were like, okay, cool, you can have people in venues now. And then suddenly everyone was like, right, stand up, go, get a microphone, get a light, you get up on stage, do a joke, do it. And I couldn't believe how quickly it all happened. And then I guess because we don't have all the people touring at the moment, like they'll be here for Comedy Festival, but we don't have people coming from interstate and things in general. So there's been a huge amount of work. Like I reckon this is the busiest that I have been in my career so far. Like I've been doing multiple gigs some nights, which I usually try and steer clear of. I've had numerous weeks where I've done 6 or 7 nights. This week and into next week, I've got like gigs for 11 nights in a row. And like that would never happen. Like that would just ordinarily never happen.
It's very New York or LA feeling, isn't it? Yeah. Multiple gigs. It has blown up in Melbourne. I have to agree with you. It's just been absolutely batshit crazy how comedy has just blown up here in Melbourne.
Yeah. It's exploded. So yeah, I've been really busy and it's been really cool and it's been really fun and it's been a great privilege because by the time the Comedy Festival comes around, like I am going to be very match fit. Like I'll just be ready for it. I've just had such a huge opportunity to work my material up that if the show's terrible, well, there's no excuses really. If the show's terrible, whoops.
Well, look,
Sorry, go on.
No, I just said, I've been so busy, I haven't done my taxes yet. So, that's one of those jokes, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I reckon if the show ends up terrible, it'll just be the first chapter in my book. Whoops. Whoops. Yeah, I had so much opportunity to work this show up and I wrecked it.
Now, if you have a question for Kirsty, please ask a question in the comments. But I do want to touch on this, and you talked about the volume of stand-up that you've been doing around Melbourne. And I want to talk about diversity in comedy. Like when you first started doing comedy, was it 6 years ago?
About 7.5, but 6 is fine.
I shaved off a couple of years of your professional work. But for 7.5 years, 8 years of your work, how has diversity changed for you? And have you seen that the lineups in Melbourne that you've been appearing has been embracing diversity? What's your take on diversity?
Yeah, awesome. Great question. I think in Melbourne, in the comedy scene in Melbourne, there's been a massive push over the last few years to introduce more diversity into comedy. I mean, there's a bunch of rooms, as you would well know, that have popped up around town, great rooms that are very dedicated to having the most diverse lineups that they can possibly get each week or month or fortnight or however often they run. I know even like the old rooms that have been around forever have like really, made a move in that direction as well. And, like to varying degrees. I mean, some rooms like to book, comedians that are working full-time in the industry. So that obviously minimises their pool of diversity immediately. But I know for a fact that they still, generally speaking, of course not all of them, but a lot of them still really try to at least make sure that they have representatives of, different genders on the lineup. At a minimum, and that should be a minimum. I mean, we should be as intersectional as possible in our lineups. But yeah, it's something that I think has moved to the forefront of a lot of bookers' minds. Yeah. And I think that's really important and it's really great because for ages and ages, there was this argument that there weren't any women in comedy. Like there's mostly men in comedy. And it was like, well, there are and there were, but they weren't given stage time or they weren't made to feel safe in the venues, or they weren't welcomed properly, so they faded into oblivion, like they didn't stick around, and like various things like that. And then of course, like it's not just a women and men thing. Like, we've got lineups in Melbourne now that are very much dedicated to, having LGBTIQA plus people on the lineup. Ones that are, really trying to push forward people of colour. And, people are trying to get more shows off the ground with disabled people, for example. Like there's a huge range of different rooms and considerations that room runners have when they're booking their lineups now, and obviously that's great. It's great for society in general. It's great for performers. It's great for audiences. It's really great for people in minority groups to be able to see themselves in pop culture, and comedy is obviously a part of pop culture. And it's great. I think it's very, very important, and it definitely warms my heart to have a look at a lineup and be like, oh, there's one straight white man on the lineup. Perfect. Like, how'd he get on? No.
and I want to talk about
a few weeks ago, interview, and the host said to me, what's it like being a gay person in comedy? And I said, sometimes we let straight people have a turn. And I was just like, there's lots of queer people doing comedy now, and it's great. It's great that they're welcomed onto platforms, and we're welcomed onto platforms. I love my othering language. I'm one as well. But yeah, that was very long. Is that how was that?
That's fine. I'm converting all these interviews to podcasters, so just riff off whatever.
Great. 3 hours later, you're like,
too warnable. But I do want to talk about your comedy festival, just plugging in your show, because it's on Melbourne International Comedy Festival, 6th to the 18th. And you did mention to me before we came on live is that you're making a bonus show accessible to your audience. And I think that's really important. That's not just about the comedy being diverse, but it's actually being accessible to a diverse audience. So I really applaud you for doing that, because, comedy isn't catered for a cohort of people. It's catered for all people. So, yeah, good job. I think that's really awesome and powerful.
Yeah, well, it's just one of those sad things that I wish was the norm, but unfortunately, it's literally old architecture in Melbourne that has led to a lot of venues and a lot of buildings in the city centre not being accessible, and venues not being able to afford the hundreds of thousands of dollars to put lifts in now, and that sort of thing. But it's been something really important to me for a really long time. And I mean, when I announced the accessible show the other day, somebody was applauding me on Twitter about it, and I was like, I don't want a pat on the back. Like, I wish it were the norm, and I wish my venue could just be accessible. I wish all of our venues could just be accessible, and there didn't have to be a big song and dance about the fact that we'd put on a bonus show that people can actually attend if they can't walk upstairs, because it's just a big cringe for me. It's like, I just want everyone to be able to come and to feel comfortable. So yeah, I was fortunate that my venue was working on a room on the ground floor that is wheelchair accessible. So that's great. And then my show on April 18th as well is going to be Auslan interpreted, which I'm also really, really stoked about. So yeah.
Fantastic.
So
and I want to ask you a question, because we are live streaming on LinkedIn, and a lot of people on LinkedIn are curious about comedy. What would be your tip for someone in corporate, how to access their funny bone? What would be a comedy tip?
Have a go. Get up and have a go. I know that sounds so pedestrian and also so intuitive, but people, there are literally people that come to my show every year that every year say to me, oh yeah, I still want to try it. I'm going to try it one day. And it's like, yeah, I totally get it. Like, it's terrifying. And taking the plunge and getting up that first time is terrifying, but you'll soon learn whether or not it's for you. And I mean, if actually getting up and putting on a stand-up set or, you know, getting up at an open mic night, if that is just completely over the top, terrifying for you, pop some jokes into the next board meeting. I haven't worked in corporate for so long. I don't even know what you'd call it if you have to talk in a board meeting. But your board meeting speech, that'll do. But yeah, the next time that you have to, you know, debrief in front of the group in the office or whatever, like what, you know, whatever. Whenever you've got any kind of small audience, like my last job before I became a stand-up comedian was government, and I used to have to deliver like talks about what my team was up to. Sometimes I wasn't even in charge of the team. I just used to have to do these talks, and I just try and make them funny. I just put a few jokes in there. And like just that, I genuinely think that was good practice for, like, you know, working on jokes later and actually just getting up there with a sole purpose to tell jokes. So if that's something that you'd be more comfortable with, have a go at that. Just make the next thing that you have to publicly speak at, make it humorous. See how you go. And then if you love it and you love that feedback, then get into an open mic night and just think about something that you can bang on about for 5 minutes. Try and put a few jokes in there. Just between you and I, we are all rubbish when we're beginning. So do not expect to be incredible. But stick at it.
Yeah, you got to stick at it and bomb it. And that's when you know you've made it past your 7.5 years, which is where Kirsty's at. We're so close to finishing the show, and we just want to say thank you to the audience. We've got India, we've got Florida, Ramona, thank you so much for joining. We've got Keith from Keyport, USA. Thank you. How exciting to be performing live again. It is so exciting. We've got Joseph from Singapore. Thank you, Joseph. Joseph said, "You're simply brilliant. What a legend." That's a good review.
Thanks,
for your
Joseph.
show.
Yeah, that's a great review. I love it. Thanks, legend.
Futsal is a great way to accidentally kick people on the pitch you don't like. Great, Joseph.
Yeah. Oh, I have thought about that, Joseph.
And I think that's a good title for your show. He's also Joseph is busy tonight. He said it's so important to keep the child alive in you, and he misses the comedy scene in Melbourne. Well, come to Melbourne.
Yeah, come back, Joseph. It's the best time of year for it too.
Yes, it is. Spain, thank you. Karen, thank you for joining. What did Joseph say? You're the international ambassador for Melbourne. What? Where's
if Joseph says so. No, you're bumped, Diana. Joseph has anointed me the international ambassador.
He's even cheering your dad, Coach River.
I love Joseph.
Joseph,
you've got the job. I don't know what job I was offering, but you've got it.
We've got a question from Aaron. What was your favorite gig?
Oh, where was your favorite gig? Wow. Oh, that's so hard. That is it. Every time someone asks me that question, I've got 100 different answers. If you went back in every interview that I ever did, you'd be like, wait up, she's always got a different answer. Favorite gig? Okay, first couple that spring to mind are I emceed Frocking Hilarious at the end of 2019 here in Melbourne in a beautiful theatre here in St Kilda.
I saw that.
Yeah, that was. Loved it. That was a great gig. That was so much fun. And one of the last gigs that I did before lockdown last year was I emceed the comedy stage at Falls Festival in Byron Bay, and that was super, super fun as well. But yeah, I mean, how many hours do you have, Aaron? The one that I did tonight was it was actually really genuinely very, very fun, but there's just so many. Yeah, there's been so many rippers.
This is a question from me. What is a question you would ask Keanu Reeves if you ever met him?
Oh, what's his hair care regime?
Yes.
I think, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So-
Would you like to meet my friend Diana?
I'm still checking.
Yeah, I'd hook his sister up. I'd be like,
Hook us all up. All of us
Yeah.
up.
yeah. But I'd love to know what he does with that hair. Wow.
Oh, such a good question. Thank you. It's gonna inspire me to keep writing my show. His
Right.
hair. Kirsty said,
Yeah.
what about hair?
Gorgeous hair.
Thank you so much for joining the show.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Thank you for having me and my dad on the show.
Just letting you know again, Kirsty's performing at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. Chuck a Sickie. So on for 2 weeks, 6:10 p.m. Links are all there. Thanks for joining, everyone. We are live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. You can catch on all these 3 platforms. And we will see you all this Friday. We're interviewing Lou Wall. So thank you, Kirsty. You can go to bed now.
Thank you. You're the best. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Good night, Dad and Mum.
And we'll see you all next time. See you guys. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the show. My name is Diana Wynn, and I am the host and creator of the SnortCast. We've been going live twice a week on the SnortCast. I just love live TV. The SnortCast. We've got international. We've got Williamsburg. We've got Ohio, Baltimore, Toronto. We've got Tonga. What? I think people just heard sex in the second point, so we'll flow from.
I am not ready to talk about it. It is. I just don't. Oh my God.
What the hell happened to your arm?
It's just a fashion accessory.
That was fantastic.
Thank you so much for joining the SnortCast, something that I deeply love doing, which is laughing, and I hope to see you on our show every week. Keep it snorting real.